Good afternoon. My name is Jo Reingold. Today is, what is today? May 5th? No, May 4th, 2021. And I'm here with Robin Sachs, and I will be interviewing her this afternoon. Hi, Robin. Thank you for being here.
Hi.
First thing we want to know is, where was your family from? Where did they live? Where did they grow up? And then where were you from and where did you grow up?
So I was born in Dallas. My father was born in Dallas, and my mother was born in Pittsburgh, but grew up most of her life in Wichita Falls, Texas. So we are Texans for generations.
Oh, great. Okay. And what area did you live in, and what were your kind of hobbies when you were growing up?
I grew up in North Dallas on a street that was a cul-de-sac. And even though it was in the heart of North Dallas, we were surrounded by fields. And there were horse pastures down the street and a big open field across the street with a small lake. And I spent most of my childhood outdoors, outside. And so it was North Dallas. Yeah.
And what kind of things did you enjoy in school, in your schooling?
English, anything creative. I loved reading. I loved English. I loved writing. I didn't know that I loved photography. My brother was actually the one in the bathroom developing film, so I really didn't know that I loved art and photography until quite a bit later that I can talk about. But yeah, I was great hiking, and we had horses that we horseback rode on a regular basis, and yeah, we grew up outdoors.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Was your family involved in anything Jewishly or civically?
We were long-term members of Temple Emmanuel. My parents, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles and their kids, we were all long-term members of Temple Emmanuel, and those of us who still live here are all still members of Temple Emmanuel, Dallas.
Okay, wonderful.
I mean, I remember Rabbi Olin quite well. All the old rabbis, and my grandparents knew Rabbi Lefkowitz. We've just been long-term members of the community.
So in that case, I want to ask you, because it's rare that I get to interview a native Dallasite, how have you seen Dallas change from when you were very young till now? What do you think?
Oh my goodness. First of all, it's developed. I mean, when I grew up, Dallas was a big town. I wouldn't even call it a city. I guess you'd call it a very small city, but it was really a big town. I mean, I used to pasture my horses at Central Expressway and Meadow Road. So, and I went to Benjamin Franklin High School, and we walk across the street and go to the horse pasture. So it's really developed. I like the fact that there are a lot of different people who've moved in here to make the city a richer, more ethnically varied place. And the architecture is beautiful. I'm glad that they preserved some of the old architecture. The new architecture is beautiful. I think Dallas is developing into a very interesting city, and I'm happy to see it.
Very good. So speaking of that, how and when did you realize that your bent was in the artistic field?
I'm a photographer, and I fell in love with photography in the days when there was film and dark rooms and manual cameras that we had to learn. And as a matter of fact, the room I'm sitting in right now, which is my digital darkroom, used to be my home chemistry darkroom. And then I had a studio down in Deep Ellum for decades, and I had a darkroom there as well. But I fell in love with photography in those days, in those early days with film. And right out of college, I was teaching newspaper and journalism at a high school. It was a really low income school in Dallas called North Dallas High School. And none of the kids there could afford a camera. They didn't have a camera. There were no cell phones or camera phones in those days. So I went out and bought myself my first camera, which was a Nicormet FT2. It was one of the first Nikons. And I bought it, taught myself how to use it, and just never put it down after that. And So during the day, I was teaching the kids photography to use for their newspaper and multimedia class. And at night, I would work at a place in Snyder Plaza that was called the Photographic Center. And there I would help out, teach people how to process and print film. And I met a lot of other photographers, and one of those photographers became my mentor. His name was Chris Regas, and he was a crazy creative photographer who taught me to think and look out of the box. And we became good friends, and he taught me a lot. And we actually shared a studio, that studio in Deep Ellum I mentioned at 500 Exposition. We were there for 20 plus years sharing a studio together.
So expand a little bit on what you would consider your artistic style.
Well, I can tell you that it's changed. At first, I only did photography as an art form. And it was all black and white and out of the box contemporary. And then I started experimenting around with photography, which incorporated mixed media. I would stitch and sew on photographic prints. I incorporated it with glass. I even took pieces of photographic prints and made a woven piece, so I would weave them together. I just was experimenting around, and then my life changed through a divorce, and I needed to make a living, and I decided I would make it doing photography. So then I started doing commissioned portraits. So I've photographed so much of the Jewish community. I have a history of it, but a lot of commissioned portraits. And then I went from there into big time commercial photography. So I've done a lot of ad campaigns and annual reports over the years. And now I'm headed back. I'm circling back to photography as an art form. I'm at that period in my life where I think I just want to explore photography again the way I loved it at first, and just as an art form.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Can you specify what kind of themes or concepts inspire your work?
I love working in series. That's my passion. I like to do a deep dive into something. So I can talk about my series, but what inspires me is I'm inspired by exploring places and trying things that I've never tried before. I've traveled all over the world, from Asia to Africa to Antarctica, and photographed all these places in every state in the United States. I've read about photography and photographers for just extensively, and I enjoy creative critique groups and brainstorming with and just chatting with other artists. And sometimes the creative process flows for me, and sometimes not so much. But everything about art for me is about personal interpretation. Even if I call it documentary photography, for me, it's just a creative process, and the creative process is sometimes very solitary. It's a solitary place. It's not just being out among people and places and photographing and shooting. It's about editing and altering and interpreting what and why I photographed a certain way or a certain thing.
Okay. One of my personal favorite things is, does Judaism influence your artwork at all?
Yes, absolutely. But mostly in the sense that it is part of who I am, always have been, and how I view the world.
Okay. And what do you want your viewers to know about your work?
I know the commissioned private portraits I have of families and my artwork that I've created have some longevity. But I also hope that the images relay a little understanding and express my attitude about life and people, and whether it's about, well, I can tell you about some series I've done. So it's about the series I've done of teachers or the earth, or just how people and places relate to each other.
Okay.
So, but the series I've done are really how I like to work, and they've been important to me. I did a book that I co-authored called I Am a Teacher, where I went to every state in the United States and I photographed and interviewed school teachers from one-room schoolhouses in North Dakota to in Alaska to inner city Chicago or New York. And they were school teachers that new school teachers, seasoned school teachers, science teachers, English teachers, first grade teachers. And I just wanted to photograph them and also listen to what they had to say. And that was the book that culminated in I Am a Teacher, that was published by Simon & Schuster. And I spent a year working on that project, and it was just glorious. But other projects I've done a project of hands and faces that were for a women's hospital that was near and dear to my heart. I photographed my house that I grew up in at 5850 Dexter Drive on the last day that my mother lived there. She was an old woman by that time. And I photographed 5850 Dexter Drive, every room, every little nook and cranny, every little architectural detail, and things that were in good shape and things that were worn that had relevance to me and my childhood. And the text of that series, just like in the teacher book, the text were the interview excerpts. The text in this project, 5850 Dexter, were my memories of growing up there, as well as my sister and my brother's memories of growing up on Dexter Drive. And those were great projects. The projects and the series I'm working on now, I started a while ago, and I'm just, well, as I said, kind of circling back to those. One is a project called Outer Layers, and it has to do with photographing organic outer layers, whether it's tree bark or skin or soil, mud, ice, very tight photographs and very abstract and very large prints. So I'm not sure if I like them best black and white, because I like black and white a lot, or I'm gonna keep them in color. I'm not sure. And then the other project I'm circling back to is one in which people share the same name, their first names. So if they all share the first name, for example, the name Rachel, well, that could be a young girl, an old woman, someone who's Anglo, someone who is Hebrew, maybe someone who's not Hebrew. So, I mean, just every ethnicity, all those people who share the same name. And for some reason, maybe it's a divine reason, they've been given the same name and they all share that string, that thread. So I've been looking into the outer layers and into the Share the Name project, which I call Namesake. So I've been working on those projects for a little while, and I'm going to get back to them now.
You sound very busy to me.
Thank you.
About our specific project for Dallas Jewish Historical Society, which is called Tzva'im, what can you tell us about the pieces that you've chosen that are going to be exhibited? What was the inspiration for them, and how you selected their titles?
Well, the titles are going to be what they are. So I'm going to probably be showing parts from my Outer Layers series. And I don't know if I'm going to use one that was these molten organic ostrich feathers that were on an ostrich, or if I'm going to be using some organic salt formations that I photographed in Bolivia. It's all going to be organic outer layers, and I'm not sure which ones I'm going to include yet, but that's what they'll be. I also want to mention, Joe, that as far as in community, I'm a past president of Jewish Family Service Dallas, and I'm really proud of that. It was from 2008 to 2010, so I just thought I'd mention that I'm still a huge believer in Jewish Family Service and the work that they do, and a big supporter of that.
Fantastic, thank you. I know you mentioned some mentors that you've had, and along that line, can you think of another person perhaps specifically that was a role model for you in your field of artwork?
In my field, it would be Chris Regas, probably. There was another photographer, Walter Nelson, who taught me about 8x10 cameras and 4x5 cameras, and he was also instrumental in teaching me large format and a lot about special processes like albumin printing and not just silver printing, but dye transfer prints and incorporating sculpture with painting and photography. So those two are probably personal mentors. I mean, people I look up to would be Amy Vitale at National Geographic. I love her work and how she is very busy in helping people in places. Other mentors would be, of course, Mary Ellen Mark and Diane Arbus, whose work I just adore.
One more thing. I know you have so many projects and so many things you've done that are absolutely fantastic, but is there anything you can think of that you perhaps have been the most proud of with your work?
With my work, I'm very proud of my presidency of Jewish Family Service. I'm really proud of that teacher book. I think it gave teachers a chance to say what they needed to say. I'm very proud of that. It incorporated both my journalism training and background and also my photography. And I think it was important. It's important to listen to teachers. And I don't think they get enough credit for all the work that they do.
As a retired teacher, I can appreciate that. I've seen a lot of your work, by the way, and it's just phenomenal. And we're so proud that you're doing this project with us. We really enjoy it.
Thank you.
My only touch of photography was taking a picture of the Brooklyn Bridge backwards, and I actually won an award for that.
Oh, okay, there you go.
That was it. My only delve into photography. So, Robin, what would you like to say to sum it all up and add to this interview?
What do I want to say and add to this interview? I'm proud to have grown up in Dallas. Dallas has gone through a lot of changes during my lifetime. I'm proud to have grown up here, and it was a wonderful thing to grow up with all the space around us and a lot of freedom that we had. And I was fortunate to have. And I think my work, the freedom to just have space also allowed me to have the space to express myself the way I wanted to in my artwork. It's just a sense of space for me.
Well, we certainly look forward to seeing all of your works, and thank you so much for being here today. And we appreciate your interview.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.